your boy. Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be doing a full-length movie review for the live-action How to Train Your Dragons movie. I personally saw it. I had a really good time with it, and I actually really enjoyed this movie. So I'm going to be doing kind of a deep dive into it, telling you everything that I loved about the movie, why I think that making it a live-action was absolutely a good decision, and I have one little gripe that I'll get to at the end of this. So let's dive into this, shall we?
Modded movie review.
Alrighty, so I do want to go ahead and say this. I personally am a die-hard fan of animation. I literally have the Pixar lamp tattooed onto my arm because that's how much I love animation. I think that it's a beautiful medium. I think that for the most part, there's a lot of animated films that should strictly say animated movies. For the most part, I think that like superhero stuff, when you can do some of the cool superpowers and whatnot, that stuff that definitely 100% should stick to animation. Stuff like Spider-Verse is fucking incredible. Stuff like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, that shows that animation is absolutely 100% a medium that people should be using a lot more. But that being said, animation can only take you so far, and I feel like when it comes to certain character relationships, there's some epic moments that could absolutely be enhanced with a live-action remake. So for me personally, I think that everybody who's saying, oh, well, live-action remakes are soulless, oh, this is just a random cash grab, I think you're kind of missing the point. I think that this film does an incredible job of kind of building upon the relationship between Stoic and Hiccup. I think that for the most part, obviously in the original movies, they have a great emotional through line that lasts throughout the three films, but I feel like I felt a lot more from those two specific characters in this live action than I did in the entirety of the first animated movie, and I think that that is really special. I think that that father-son dynamic is great, and I think that for the most part, there's a lot of small moments like that where the characters really get a moment to shine. And also, to basically say what really sold me on this film, this movie opens up and we're getting introduced to Berk with the narration, very similar to how you get it in the original animated movie. And they're explaining all the things about like there being dragons and these are the people who fight the dragons and stuff like that. And in the first 15 minutes, we get to see a scene of Gerard Butler fist fighting a dragon. That is sick. Are you kidding me? That was so cool. I absolutely loved that. And that from that moment on, I immediately was just like, okay, this is why this should be live action. I think that this is the kind of movie that should have been made a live action almost originally. And it's one of those things where it's like, I think it is hard to pick and choose which movies should have live action adaptations and which ones shouldn't. But I think it is very easy to say that this is a movie where pretty much the entire cast is people. And to make a movie where the entire cast is primarily people and be like, yeah, maybe we should make a live action version of that, I feel like is a no-brainer. I think that it's weird when you do stuff like The Lion King and movies like that where there's not a single person in it. How are you going to make that a live action? They did the same thing with The Lady and the Tramp, and it just doesn't necessarily work when you're not adapting a story with actual characters that are people that you could bring to life with actual real life actors. And it's just one of those things where it's like, this is a film that had they had the resources to do it back when it came out in 2010, 2012, whenever it came out, I feel like could have been potentially a really good live action adaptation, but visual effects weren't necessarily as high quality as they are now. And there's a lot of different small things here and there that I feel like they wouldn't have necessarily been able to make this movie when they made the original animated films, and being able to bring it to life is just beautiful. I think that the dragons look absolutely incredible. The scaling is absolutely phenomenal. At the very end of the movie, we get to see the mother of all dragons, or like the queen bee, I think is what they refer to her as in the movie. And it's a dragon that's the size of a mountain. And you get to see this giant kaiju dragon alongside with characters, and you actually get to see like the people on that dragon and just getting to see the scale of it. It's just absolutely phenomenal. And it's one of those things where it's just like, if you like any Godzilla movie that's ever existed, if you like any kind of kaiju related films, you should love that ending. I think that the final act is absolutely phenomenal. And I think that there's a lot of little emotional through lines throughout this entire film that makes it worth watching. I think that Nico Parker absolutely embodies Astrid. I think that she's absolutely perfect in this movie. I would say she's kind of the standout for me here. Obviously, Gerard Butler, I think absolutely is incredible as well. And for the most part, all of the casting decisions that I was a little iffy on going into this film, I almost instantly got proved wrong. I think that the twins did a phenomenal job. They make a couple of comedic bits about the fact that they don't necessarily look like twins. And I think that that in itself actually makes it work a lot. Like, a lot of people are like, well, we wanted the twins to look like twins. And they constantly are making jokes about like, our own mother can't even tell us apart. And you're looking at them and you're like, oh, okay. And I think that it just plays into the kind of the silly, goofy levels of it. And I think that for the most part, it's just a very entertaining story. And I think that for the most part, this is a movie for kids, getting relatively young and upcoming actors to play these roles. I think that all of them, for the most part, nailed the characters that they're playing. I had a really good time with this. I think that overall, this film is perfectly encaptures the heart and soul of the original movie, and it definitely gives people who are fans of that original trilogy something to love and something to really enjoy. They really flesh out the whole. In the original movie, they do have I think it's called like the Trial of Fire, where basically they're training to fight dragons and they're doing these little missions and they're fighting against small dragons and small dragons and small dragons until eventually the winner gets to slay a dragon. And the way that they do this in the original movie, it is very quickly montaged through. And I think that we spend a lot more time with it in this film, which is something that I do really like. When I saw the first reviews come out and people were like, oh, it's a 1-to-1 adaptation, I was kind of like, the runtime of the live action is like 20 minutes longer. There's no way it's a 1-to-1. So you get a lot of different moments like that throughout this film that I think are really interesting. Like, Hiccup uses his knowledge that he's learning from Toothless and training Toothless and all this different stuff, and he's implementing it immediately into the ring. And the way that they're able to portray that is really cool. I think that they do a really good job of kind of showcasing the brains versus bronze aspect of things that I think is one of the most interesting things about Hiccup, because he's kind of like a Leonardo da Vinci type. Like, back in the day, Leonardo da Vinci, obviously, he's mostly known for his art, but he also had some crazy inventions that he wanted to build, and he constantly had, like, these different, like, ideas of, like, okay, well, this is something that we can make, and it would make life a lot better, and it would make things a lot easier for us. And from the get-go, we're immediately seeing Hiccup with all these different really cool inventions, and I think that it's really cool. I really enjoy it. I think that this dorky archetype that Mason Thames was able to bring to the character works relatively well, and for the most part, I think that it's solid. But I will say, one of my only negatives about this film, for one, this is a problem with the original movie, so I'm not going to give this too much, negative attention. But Stoic has an insanely cool Viking accent that's super deep, incredibly strong. You can tell that he's from, some other country. And then we get Hiccup, and he just sounds like a basic American little child. And one thing that I personally have a little bit of a gripe with Mason Thames, I think that he's, for one, an incredible actor, right? I think that this guy's going to have an incredible career. In fact, I'm really looking forward to him 10 years, maybe not 10 years, maybe like 4 or 5 years from now, when he's old enough that he can kind of fill in this rom-com hole that we're currently feeling. Because I feel like for the most part in the last like 4 or 5 years, almost every single rom-com that has came out has had to have Glenn Powell in it to be good. And there's a lot of young actors right now that I think are about to be in that age range where they have the energy of like the dorky, weird, and they have the comedic chops to play rom-coms relatively well. So I think there's going to be a rom-com revival in like 4 years from now. I'm calling it now, with actors like Ben Wang and Jacob Tremblay and this Mason Thames. I think that those 3 guys are going to be like leading in rom-coms 4 years from now, and they're going to be great, and it's going to be awesome. But to kind of critique one small thing about this movie, there are some moments where he is sounding like Hiccup from the animated movie. There are some moments where it's like some of the most iconic sequences, and he's doing this specific voice to try to make it sound like he sounds like Hiccup. And he comes in, and it's like really weird because it's like the majority of the movie he just sounds like Mason Thames, and then he randomly is like, oh, this is the really iconic scene where he meets Hiccup for the first time. He is Hiccup. He didn't meet himself. He meets Toothless for the first time, and he like uses a very specific voice to kind of sound a little bit more like the animated version of Hiccup. And what bothers me about this is I wouldn't have a problem if the entire movie he just sounds like Mason Thames, right? I understand that Hiccup voice is a voice decision that voice actor decided to make when he originally played the character, but it's not necessarily something that has to exist for Hiccup. Like, it's something where it's like, it's just his voice. He could potentially not sound like that. But because there are some scenes where he is doing that voice and the entire rest of the movie he's not, it really takes me out of the movie. It really is something that throws me off a lot because, like, Mason Thames, like I said, he's a talented actor. I really like him. I think for the most part, he really gets that dorky, nerdy kind of like klutz energy perfectly down packed. And for the most part, I think he embodies Hiccup relatively well. I will say, as somebody who's gone to Epic Universe and has seen the hiccups that they have at Epic Universe, it is kind of awkward because, like, the Astrids that they have at Epic Universe, right, they're solid. I still think Nico Parker embodies the character more than the actors that they have playing them at the theme park. There's one guy at Epic Universe that I swear he is Hiccup. He basically is like born and existed, and he just like is Hiccup now. And for one, he gets the voice down. For two, he gets the mannerisms down, and he even like really like his body movements, his body languages are just so perfect as Hiccup. And I noticed this when they were doing promo where Nico Parker and Mason Thames went to Epic Universe and they were interacting with the theme park versions of their characters. That like Mason Thames did not put his all into embodying this character. And it does kind of bother me a little bit because as the lead character, we're spending the most time with him. And for the most part, he's just a regular teenage boy. And it does kind of bother me a little bit because I'm like, you couldn't have gotten somebody who a little bit more awkward, a little bit more nervous, and actually has this like fear factor to him. And one of my original complaints, and I'm not actually like complaining about it here, but one of my first complaints when they announced him as Hiccup was that he's somebody who's very attractive and somebody who's very confident, and I wasn't sure he was going to be able to sell that like insecurity, and I don't think he sold it as well as I was kind of hoping to. There's still a lot of emotional moments that he absolutely does sell. Like there's a couple of moments with him and Gerard Butler that are just absolutely fantastic. But there's a lot of moments where he's supposed to be like really nervous and like absolutely like quaking in his boots, and he's just like not. And that does bother me a little bit. But that's one of my only gripes. I still think that he's absolutely fantastic, and I am excited to see him potentially grow into this role more with the sequel coming out. For people who do not know, they already greenlit the second live-action How to Train Your Dragon movie. I'm excited about it. I think it's going to be good. Once again, you have the original writer and the original director working on these films. I think that that kind of saves it from being like a soulless cash grab or just copying and pasting the same movie, because like the original director was like, this should be a live action. This would be epic as a live action. We could actually do this as a live action. Let's do it. And he's fully on board for it. And some of the Viking sequences are so beautifully shot that it's like, I have a hard time being like, no, this is stupid. How dare they make a live action? It's good. It's solid. It's incredible. And like the test drive scene in live action, breathtaking. I literally got goosebumps in the theater. You can't tell me that that wasn't worth making. So that being said, that's pretty much all I have to say for that. If I had to give this movie a rating on a scale of 1 to 100, as I typically do, I'm going to give this movie a solid 90, because I give the original animated movie a solid 90. I think that they're both incredibly good. I think that the sense of humor is absolutely fantastic. And I think that for the most part, like I said, the cast really embodies their roles incredibly well. I think that there's a small couple of hiccups with Mason Thames' performance. Come on, that was a good one. Okay, anyways, but yeah, so overall, that's all I gotta say here. I did really enjoy this movie, and I know that all of my little complaints are very nitpicky, but that being said, I still think that, like I said, there's a lot of room to grow, and I'm very excited to see what they do with the future of this franchise and these movies. But yeah, that's it for this video, guys. Let me know your thoughts down below if you've seen the movie, and I hope I get to see you guys in the next one. Peace out. Bow.